Are we ready to go fully cashless?
You have mixed messages. It's a bit tough.
Rejuvenation, that is probably our buzzword for next year. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Amalina Kamal and I just want to thank our audience for staying true to us for these past few weeks. Now today we are going to be looking into Putrajaya's policies under the Madani government led by our Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Now yes, it has in fact been a year ever since the Prime Minister stepped into his role, where many attributed his leadership to be energetic. Now, we have seen a range of policy introductions and much are aimed towards making life better for Malaysian folks. However, experts have shared that while the unity government successfully carried out some crucial institutional reforms, they have introduced to us, all these policies. However, they want to know how these would fare moving forward. We're going to be looking into this in particular and more, but before that, I want to introduce our guests. First, to my right, I have Prasanna Nambia. Prasanna, welcome.
Hello, hi.
Hello. Now, this is your first time here with us, right?
Yes, that's right.
How are you feeling?
So far, so good.
Now, Prasanna is our news editor for the Business Times. She will be helping us unpack anything that goes within the developments under EPF, as well as the targeted subsidies, at least under the Madani government later on. But also with us, we have Samirul Arif, our economist and international relations expert attached to Global Asia Consulting and was formerly with Malaysia Institute of Economic Research, MIR. Welcome, Samirul.
Thank you.
Next to Samirul, we have Dr. Muhammad Afzanizam Abdul Rashid, Bank Muamalat Malaysia Berhad's chief economist. Dr. Afzanizam, how are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Most welcome.
Because today in particular, we're going to be talking about, policies under the Madani government, and who better than both of you to be here helping us unpack this. Now, before we get into that, I just want to go into today's report of the government disbursing about 1 billion to 10 million Malaysians beginning Monday under the Madani e-credit initiative. Now, for those of us who don't already know, eligible Malaysians can apply for the one-off cash credit, which is 100 ringgit via e-wallet service providers. You've got your Touch and Go, your Maybank app and stuff. And this initiative is actually made possible via the Madani economy framework. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim actually said that Malaysians aged 21 and above who were recipients of Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah is also qualified for this particular e-credit. I just want to understand this first. Are we ready for going, to go fully cashless? Samirul, you can start.
This is a commendable move. Basically, it entices people who are not familiar with the e-wallet to use it, because adoption of this payment mechanism is widespread in some countries, but not so in other countries. But in our case, I'm wondering, you're giving out 100 ringgit, and that's about 1 billion, you're saying. I'm afraid that this is like a helicopter rain of money, so to speak.
But a lot of people are saying that this is to prepare for, the children's new school term next year. Also, as celebrating year-end festival. Are you trying to say that we should actually move away from these of handouts?
No, because it's like because it's not targeted. And so it's like somebody from the Ministry of Finance or government goes on a helicopter and splashes out 100 ringgit to everyone. The danger is that it can trigger a demand-induced inflation. That is the concern here.
Okay.
Yeah. So subsidies should be targeted, and it should be for those deserving. But on the other hand, you can argue that this is to acclimatize people with the e-wallet system. I understand in China it is very widely used. Probably in some European countries they plan to be cashless, but in other places like in the US, for example, there's some resistance.
maybe what you can probably share with our audience is that what does the Madani economy framework here means in that sense? Because this is part of the whole movement, right?
Yeah, basically, the Prime Minister heads a coalition government, and he has to pull together, to cobble together a coalition of parties with different political ideologies and all that. So he needs a economic framework that is just and civil, and so you got this name Madani, and so that's why we need this kind of framework, because actually in the past in universities in Europe they taught philosophy first, and then politics and economics. That is how economics was taught. It was not about numbers alone. It was not about number crunching alone, because when you just crunch numbers without some philosophical background, you might lose the bigger picture. So that's why Adam Smith, before he wrote the Wealth of Nations, he wrote the theory of moral sentiments. And so and actually, what is interesting is Adam Smith got his ideas from Ibn Khaldun. I can give you two instances. Adam Smith talked about making needles, and that is what Ibn Khaldun in his works described about division of labor, and he actually used the example of person making needle. And the other thing is that Ibn Khaldun said the wealth of nation is not in its gold or silver or whatever, it's in the human capital and their capability to contribute and generate. And that's what Adam Smith talks about too. So that's why this Madani framework, it's to have a civil society where there's justness, equity, and all of that. It's just not about growing for growing sake.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but how can we expand from, this is probably at least coming back to where the Madani initiative comes from, right? How can we look into this sort of incentive that was introduced that will be executed on Monday forward, move beyond what you just mentioned, this rain of cash that is being given out to the society?
No, in this case, I don't know what's the rationale. You can say to encourage people to use e-wallets, but on the other hand, it's not targeted, so you have that danger of helicopter rain of money. But on the other hand, it's one of the steps that the Prime Minister is trying to put this Madani framework into action. Yeah, and so far we have seen the new industrial master plan, for example, which is preparing Malaysia for our second industrial takeoff, because Malaysia has prematurely deindustrialized. Up to the year 2000, manufacturing contributed to around 35% of the gross domestic product. Now, it only contributes probably around 23% of the national economic output.
Correct.
So it has reduced in terms of contribution, and we are not yet a high income economy. We are not yet a developed country, but manufacturing has taken a back seat. So and a lot of manufacturing that we do is in intermediate goods, in electronics, E&E. So we need this the NIP, a new industrial and that's one aspect. And the other one is you have the budget, which was tabled, and then you have the energy policy and all that. So we're still beginning to see these plans to put the Madani economic framework in action.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned about industrial revolution of sorts, right? Because yes, definitely we are backwards when it comes to upgrades. And then this is one of the reasons why PWM is also introduced, and is still being shaped into how it can actually support not just the employers but also the employees. But I just want to touch on, the capacity building efforts on the ground. Have we seen enough being done by the Madani government within the past year?
First year, basically, they are trying to get to know the system and understand how it works before they can make the right tweaks and all that. I think second year onwards, they will probably be engaging, and they'll be probably implementing what they have been studying for the past 1 year. Yeah, I think that's when the action will start, 2024.
I see.
You mentioned about the progressive wages model. Basically, when we introduced the minimum wage around 2013 or something like that, 2012, that Singapore introduced the progressive wages model, right? So actually, we have a minimum wage, and that is mandatory by law. And it started out probably around 900, Sabah, Sarawak 800. Now it's around 800 ringgit. Now it's 1,500. Sabah, Sarawak is less because their productivity is less, although the cost of living there is more, because you need to factor in the transport by land and transport by sea. You have cabotage policy, haulage and all that. But Singapore, they have this progressive wage model, and it was initially for 3 sectors, and it was not mandated. But these 3 sectors were, the workers were not paid well. They were foreigners, turnover rate was high, so they thought they would come out with some kind of mechanism to encourage workers to upgrade themselves and maybe entice Singaporeans to do this kind of jobs. It was initially, if I'm not mistaken, it was security, landscape and cleaning services, if I'm not mistaken, in Singapore. But the thing is that we have a minimum wage model, and if you made it a progressive, productivity linked wage system, it will also become progressive.
But again, going to PWM and how the Madani government has actually pushed for this policy or the idea of it into upgrading our industries. What do you think is still missing?
I think they will launch the trial next year, if I'm not mistaken, in June. No, because the medium.
But from now until the trial, has there been a lack of the capacity building? I'm saying like probably the reach out between the stakeholders. From your observations, that you want to say?
Well, the employers don't like it. They said that this is not. This what the employers say. This the job of the Minister of Economics is to improve the economy, not to talk about wages. And so they say wages, it's a tripartite matter, that is employers, employees and Ministry of Human Resource. That's their argument. But you see, in Malaysia, the median wage is very low. Maybe Dr. Abdul might know.
2,400.
Yeah. So that means that 50% of the population earns less than 2,400 ringgit. Yeah. So you can see that's not very healthy. Yeah. And so that's why they are looking, and this also tied to the Madani initiative and Gaji Bermarwah and so on. So you can imagine half of the population is earning less than 2,400 ringgit, and with actually it's not the rising cost of living, because the cost of goods here is still in services low when compared to our neighbours and tourists when they come. It's about wages being suppressed or depressed, and I say the mystery of stagnant wages. So wages have not been rising in tandem.
Okay, if I may, Samirul as well as Dr. Nizam, today actually the first reading of the white paper on the progressive wage policy is being held in Parliament. I believe even YB Minister Rafizi Ramli will be having a press conference on that as well. So maybe you can give us an idea of what you think might be in that white paper, and how will it actually spur discussion and perhaps move it along, so that we can actually come up with a policy that helps to increase wages.
The way I see it, progressive wage model, I think it's a form of intervention by the government to address the inefficiencies in determining the level of wages in the labour markets. I mean, previously we talked about minimum wage, and now we are going into progressive wage model, which I think it will revolve around capacity building, meaning ensuring that the employees will be equipped the necessary skill set that would allow them to upgrade themselves in terms of their functions, and then along the way the level of wages being paid will be higher than before lah. So then we shall see perhaps what are the key industries that will be the focus. I think Samuel did mention about the progressive wage model in Singapore, I think they've been implementing certain key industries now, not all. So I think maybe there will be more informations on the I think presumably in terms of the key sectors that would be the perhaps the test bed for implementing progressive wage model.
I see. Okay. Samirul, would you like to add?
I was going to say, I mean, businesses are not charities, so we have a issue with level of productivity, and that is why that contributes to the low wages amongst others. So even at 1,500, it's a big attraction for foreign workers, but maybe not for our workers. And that's the other thing. Over the past 2 decades or so, we have been losing a lot of skilled labor, but at the same time, we are attracting a lot of unskilled labor. So we have to, and that is part of the reason why we can't break the middle income trap. So you need greater productivity. Our workforce has, and we have to automate and all that. And we have a big addiction to cheap, unskilled foreign labor, because foreign labor can also be skilled labor, but we are attracting more of the unskilled foreign labor. How many foreign workers do we have in Malaysia? Approximately registered probably around 2 million. But based on my Sejahtera vaccination doses, there are around 6 million doses administered for the first dose, and so and from telco data is around 6.5 million. So you can make assumption probably for every one registered foreign worker there probably be 2 more, and they are in construction, initially construction and agriculture, but now it's everywhere, services and all that. So that's the thing, among the reason why we have to look at the wages, not only because Malaysians complain about their living standards, but also we are attracting a lot of and in turn the foreign workers will be remitting the money back to their own country. I'll stop there.
Yep.
Okay, I actually, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned this as well, but my thought processes are still stuck when you mentioned that, you know, subsidies needs to be targeted. And talking about targeted subsidies, right, we have that RON95 that's supposed to be underway, and, you know, with this, the e-voucher that we seem to be introducing, but, you know, in terms of the reaction is pretty mixed. I just want to understand, maybe on the RON95 here first, like what do we know about that, at least when it comes to the subsidies?
Actually, the latest I think was that they're planning to implement it in the second half of 2024.
Okay.
But other than that, we do not have any other information actually, because basically it's a plan. They've set a target, and I think everybody's working towards that. Of course, before all that happens, we have to have PADU come into play. PADU is where we are supposed to have the central database where, you know, we get the information that is needed to ensure that the subsidies go to people who need it, instead of the blanket subsidies, which has been talked about a lot. So actually we don't know the details of what that targeted subsidy for RON95 would be, but the idea is that we have a target to meet, and I guess everybody will be working towards that target, unless Samirul or Dr. Nizam has any.
Well, okay, I think we need to understand why this has to happen, and we need to sequencing the right sequence in terms of addressing all these problems. I mean, we talked about subsidies just now. I mean, prior to this, we've been talking about that these subsidies are not targeted. It's meant for everyone, and most of the time it will benefit the high income individuals. And now we talk about how we can transition this economy towards renewable, towards something that's more sustainable. And that's give more the reason why the rationalization of subsidies, fossil fuel subsidy, has to happen, because otherwise it won't give the right incentive for our societies to migrate towards renewable energy kind of economy. So in that sense, these changes are not easy, and there will be what we call that side effects, because if you look at the compositions of RON95, diesel, in the consumer price index is quite, I think, quite sizable. Rantiva is actually accounted about 7% thereabouts. Diesel smaller, 0.3%. Any change to these prices will definitely have knock-on effects in terms of inflation. So while we want to address this issue, there will be some side effects, and therefore I think why we can see the forecast for inflations for next year, the range is quite wide, between 2.1% to 3.6%. That's more than 1% range.
Yes.
So it gives you the impressions that the uncertainties of possible changes in policies, especially on subsidies, it may have in terms of inflation. But these are the changes that has to happen so that the government will have more resources that can be directed towards something that is more productive, perhaps the likes of education, healthcare, infrastructure. So these are all capacity building means which it needs money, it needs cash, and there is certain targets whereby the government needs to narrow down their fiscal deficits towards 3% of GDP by 2025. And now the government has put in their Fiscal Responsibility Act.
Yes.
Correct. I just wanted to ask you on that.
So these are other areas that we need to talk and need to educate our societies that having a resilient public finance is critical, because we are living in a days and age whereby volatility is going to be there, and the recessions or booming of the economy tends to happen within a shorter time frame. And typically when you have some issues on possible economic downturns, that will require direct interventions from the fiscal authorities. Then we talk about the resources So therefore these are the areas that needs to be looked at, so that the government will always in a state of ready to face any possible challenges.
So back to that, right, Doctor? We all know how 2024 is going to be another uncertain year because of what's happening with the global economy as well. So is it the right time for targeted subsidy? As you said, it will actually have an impact on the economy because of its issues with inflation, and that's something that has been tied closely with OPR. So, I mean, can we actually manage things?
These are critical decisions, and finding the right timing has always been a challenge. And I think when we talk about rationalizing the subsidies, it doesn't mean that we just cut down the subsidies alone per se. There will be some mitigating measures, like bumping up the cash transfers. I think in the budget, the budget announcement for 2024, it did mention about the additional allocation for STR, the sumbangan tunai rahmah from 8 billion to 10 billion. So I think if the government were to go ahead and push ahead further in terms of subsidy rationalizations, perhaps for RON 95, which commands the lion's share of fossil fuel subsidies, then therefore we might see another rounds of additional allocation for STR.
I see.
So that's how the government try to mitigate the short-term impact arising from these changes.
I suppose this is the also understanding behind the Madani economy framework, the rationalization that goes behind every single initiatives that's been thrown out.
See, the problem is that we collect enough revenue just to finance our operating expenditure. You see, and this has been like that since probably 98 or so. So we have been borrowing for our development expenditure. This is what has been happening, and that's why during Najib's time was probably like 40 billion a year, and then subsequently under Muhyiddin and Ismail Sabri probably went to 80 to 90 billion a year. So let's understand what's going. What it means is that we collect enough revenue just to finance operating, which is to pay salaries and pensions, and so development expenditure to build schools, infrastructure, that we've been borrowing, and this has been happening for a long time. And to understand even further, the tax to GDP ratio has fallen. It's probably around 11 to 12%, which is very, very low. What this means is that although the amount of tax has increased, as a percentage, it is actually decreased. In other countries, have even a higher percentage than us. So, example, you have a 1 ringgit, 20 cent is 20%. But if you have 2 ringgit, 30 cent is only 15%. You need for that kind of situation. So how is the government going to give all the good facilities and infrastructure if it's not collecting enough revenue? That's the issue. And I said we have been borrowing for our development expenditure. And to understand, subsidies is about 80 billion, and that last year, and it's almost equivalent to our development expenditure. And so subsidies, once you use it, it's gone, and half of it is probably for fuel. So that's why, because if they had good revenue and all that, then probably we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Okay, I want to go into EPF, or at least Malaysia's social safety net here. Okay, so what we know is that there is a possibility, obviously, for account 3 to take place next year. Maybe Prasanna, you can share more on this particular report.
Okay, so basically what happened last week was that the Deputy Finance Minister Datuk Sri Ahmad Mazlan mentioned that they are looking to implement Account 3 in April 2024. So from there, he gave us just a bit more details on what's the plan. As in now, they are looking at possibly getting allowing only for withdrawals for emergencies. When previously there was talk that it would work something like a savings account where you could take out the money in account 3 as and when you needed it. So his mention of actually possibly even having to specify emergencies that enable you to bring out the money from account 3 actually was a bit of a wild kite, I guess, in that sense. So that got us thinking about what else could we follow up, because we found that our readers were especially very interested in that story about EPF Account 3, right? So we actually called up a few economists to get them to weigh in. One of them was, of course, Dr. Nizam. Right. So we found out that there's a very big likelihood that Account 3 might have lower dividends. Why? Because it's actually for a very short tenure. Obviously, it wouldn't work like Account 1 or Account 2, where it's either Account 2, at least you have an opportunity to take it out, because there are certain, certain eligibility for certain withdrawals. But Account 1 is definitely held off until your retirement.
Right.
So for Account 3, if you were to allow withdrawals, it would mean that it's there for a short tenure. Therefore, you wouldn't actually give the same dividend rate as for Account 1 or Account 2. At least that was the discussion. And also there was mention about how it wouldn't be more than 10%. The allocation for Account 3, because obviously the whole point of EPF is your retirement savings. So why did we come to this? I guess that's maybe something that Dr. Nizam as well as Samirul can weigh in on, but that was the discussion that came about. And of course all this is not decided, it's still being thought through. So this was just actually a means of getting everyone talking about it, because the minister actually mentioned that they're still looking for feedback from contributors. So if you do feel strongly about this, it's a good time to get in touch with EPF and give your feedback, because this will determine what actually happens with Account 3.
So my bigger question here is that how can we create a better dialogue when it comes to the importance of social security, as well as having to boost our financial literacy here, and not really looking into, okay, now we have Account 3, this is one way of you to get your reserves or sorts.
Yeah.
Dr. Nizam.
Okay. Well, I think it's all this discussion comes about because of the COVID-19. And one of the key measures that was introduced back then to stabilize the economy is to allow this unconventional withdrawal scheme. And thereafter, there seems to be an addictions for EPF to come into the picture and become the main tools now. Otherwise, if you look at the past, before COVID-19, I noticed the role of EPF was quite instrumental as well when it comes to managing economic shocks. The common tools was to cut down the members' contribution rates. We saw that happen in 2001 because of tech bubble burst and issues on the terrorist attack in the US back then. 2003 SARS epidemic. And then come 2008, 2009, the global financial crisis due to the subprime issues in the US. And then, because of the shocks, because of the concern over government debt in the European economies during 2011, 2012. So the common tools that we used back then was just to cut down the members' contribution rate between 2% to 3%. That will give them some cash for them to spend. But when it comes to COVID, the approach was entirely different. Becomes so unconventional, and thereafter people become so used to that. So we have that fixation that EPF should play a major role when it comes to dealing with cost of living. So I think what's happening here is the government is trying to strike the right balance, a delicate balance. As you rightly point out, if you allow this country, we haven't seen the actual mechanism yet.
Yeah.
But if you look at the requirements, it means to fulfill members' cash requirement in emergency. So that means the withdrawal can be at any time. So from the fund management point of view, they need to allocate certain asset or instruments. They are very liquid, which typically revolves around money markets. And money markets are very highly liquid assets, but it commands low returns. And therefore, from risk and return point of view, ideally speaking, it seems that the money in the country perhaps should command lower dividends because it is meant to fulfill the short-term needs of our members. So these are the issues that needs to be addressed, but the bigger picture here is I think the nest egg has been used to fulfill to address the short-term needs. Then at what price? Obviously there will be some trade-offs about how a member could actually accumulate their retirement savings when it comes to their retirement age, because the more you withdraw, then the more you lose out the compounding factor from investing in EPF funds. And EPF's investment team has been very professionally driven, and you can see their over the years their track record has been proven, and their dividend rate I think is quite commendable, definitely above inflation rates. And therefore if you keep the money in EPF until retirement, you can enjoy that compounding factor, which can actually help you help the members to accumulate sufficient retirement savings when they retire.
In an uncertain world, I would say EPF has actually managed to give some sort
True.
of stability to all of us, right?
Investment world is very, very dynamic, and you can see I think this year you should be able to give a better dividend because they have recorded quite a commendable growth in their income for the first 9 months. But next year we still uncertain. We talk about the possible cut in interest rates globally. So that would mean, usually when central banks start to cut rates, that means the economy is not doing well.
That's right. That's right.
Samira, I feel like you want to add to that, right?
I was going to say, globally, people have been withdrawing from their retirement funds during the COVID. IMF has also produced a paper on this. That's all I want to say. It's not peculiar to Malaysia.
Peculiar. But perhaps, it's a sign of mixed signals. There, the government is, even EPF actually, they're going quite aggressively in trying to get more people to set up a EPF account under Aisara, and there's that push. But then there's this other one where we say, okay, it's okay, maybe you can withdraw from account 3. So
it's like acting like a bank.
So when you have mixed messages, it's a bit tough.
This is where I think the role of financial literacy comes into picture. obviously the government is allowing this flexibility, but at the end of the day, the choice is the members lah.
That is true.
Again, like you said, the Aisaraan, the traction was good.
Yes.
The contribution from the gig employees was commendable.
Yes.
They are able to to see this contribution rates coming in very commendable lah. But having this flexibility, then it kind of put a setback in terms of how people, members could actually accumulate their funds. So I think the role of financial literacy is something that we need to boost further lah, in terms of the knowledge.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a very interesting, I suppose, year looking ahead, right? So we've seen all these policy introductions, and some of it has already been implemented. But general question here: do you see our government being open to improvise some of the implementations that have already been made? You guys are from, especially Dr. Nizam, you're part of the banking or financial institutions, right? Are they responsive when it comes to matters, especially when it comes to finance?
Yeah. That's why if you notice in Islamic banking sphere, since 2017, the Bank Negara has launched this value-based intermediations, and you can see it has evolved, whereby they will focus on areas like wakaf, zakat. And I still remember when we were hit by COVID-19 in 2020, the microfinancing was engaged using ITECAT methods lah, which means the microfinancing program designed for the asnaf, for those who are the recipient of zakat funds. And now it started with one bank, but now there are, I think, more than 10 banks actually participating in the ITECAT programs. And we can see that these asnaf entrepreneurs, I mean, there are some who failed, but they are also doing well, and there are some actually can start to pay off their zakat to the Islamic religious councils. So we see some good tractions, and how Islamic bank can play their role to promote the so-called social outward mobility. And this happened, I would say, or at least be accelerated because of the COVID-19.
Yeah, that's true.
Thoughts, Samirul?
Oh, no. I was just thinking about our social safety net and all that. So in my mind, it comes to Norway and their Norges Bank, their central bank. So they have managed the petroleum or fossil fuel reserves of Norway extremely well. That's an excellent example of a social safety net. I don't know whether we can do that. That's what I was thinking, when we talk about all of this.
I mean, okay. That's a very good benchmark of sorts. But as far as like some reform agendas, the government has indeed put certain timelines, right? We obviously, for this particular discussion, we talk about economy a lot. But in terms of the politics side, the Political Financing Act is expected to be passed by the end of 2025. While the Government Procurement Act will also be tabled by mid-2024. Just want to understand from our guests here, what is one, I suppose, agenda that you guys are looking forward to for next year at least? Maybe press from the business desk side.
Okay, for me, I mean, I look at it as a big picture kind of thing. So next year is a very important year for the economy, because you're talking about all these reform policies which have been announced. But in 2024 is when you will see it implemented. That's PADU, there's the progressive wage policy. I guess after the first reading, it should be quite fast. And from the way the minister has been pushing it, I think he's trying to get that into the economy as fast as possible. And then, of course, there's the targeted subsidies. When you look at it as a whole, 2024 is a very important year for economic reform for the country, actually. So and how we manage that, I guess, how it all pans out, and how it actually impacts the man on the street. That is what I would say is important for 2024 lah.
Dr. Nizam?
Well, I like to echo what Rasana said. I think it's about execution and outcome. and how these two would translate into confidence. To me, when you look at the ringgit, it's also a sign of confidence level.
Yes.
While the dollar ringgit has been obviously been affected by the external front, but there are also consideration domestically. So I like to link the policy as the main driver for confidence building. But so far, I think the government has laid out quite a good case in terms of areas to be reformed. So now it's a matter of execution and outcome.
The devil is in the details, right, Dr. Nizam?
Yes.
Samirul, to end this.
Yeah, I mean, next year will be a challenging year. I mean, you see, after COVID, we had high growth, and that was due to the low base effect, because economic activity almost came to a standstill in 2021. So when activities resume, you had a rebound, and that coupled with an influx of tourists or visitors coming into Malaysia, and with all those EPF withdrawals, so the economic activity that is how the economic activity was generated and contributed. But then 2023, you begin to see reality begins to sink in, you see. Our major trading partner, China, has slowed down, and you can see GDP numbers, from second quarter it dropped to 2.9, now it's slightly up 3.2 something like that. What was earlier in the year, 7.6 or something like that, right? Yeah, so you can see 7.6 2.9 was a major drop. So so you see, Malaysia is a small open economy, highly interconnected to the global markets, you see. So when our major trading partner, in this case China, slows down, who are our major trading partners? China, Singapore and the US. So if China slows down, so will Singapore, so will ASEAN. So next year is going to be a challenging year, because I mean, how do we get economic growth, right? We export besides our domestic consumption, but domestic consumption, we also have consumption fatigue. People have been borrowing to finance their consumption, and so they are having high household debts and so on and so forth. And then you have low wages and all of that. So it's how we navigate all of this. And so this geopolitical considerations and domestic considerations, among others, and how do we position ourselves? These are some of those things that are in my mind.
And just now, earlier on, we were talking about recognizing the rationality behind subsidization of goods. I think this kind of dialogue should be emulated and encouraged further, in a way whereby eventually it lands to on the side of our government, so we can improve further.
I want to add,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, you can't compare to growth in the 90s. This is what I want to say. At that time, we took off, and it's called input dividend growth. So that's why we had very high growth rates. And at that time, China was not part of the WTO, and we didn't have competitors like Vietnam or even India was not an issue then. And that's why back then, FDIs will constitute a major component of our our economic growth, right? But now it has been reduced. We have many competitors, among others, and our economy has also changed. It's no longer input driven growth. At this stage of the economy, it's more about innovation, economic complexity, and so on and so forth. All countries will experience rapid growth during that input driven growth, but subsequently, for any growth, you have to focus on this. And I give you an example, US and all that. So they don't have stagnation because they keep on rejuvenating, and that's what we need to do. That ties into the economic complexity and economic structure and so on and so forth. That's the point that maybe you have more to say.
I think that's a nice rejuvenation. That is probably our buzzword for next year. Like execution, rejuvenation, and how we reiterate the policies that are at the moment. All right, thank you so much, everybody. My name is Amalina Kama. I would also like to thank all of our guests here for joining this episode of Beyond the Headlines, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much.